So I am really honored to be welcoming a really great friend of mine who I've known for many, many years. And our relationship and friendship goes back to music. I do have a music background. I am a trained vocalist and I went to a performing arts high school in New York City. So it's like kind of equivalent of getting a college degree in music. And I started the first masjid youth choir in the United States. And when Micah moved back to the United States, he wanted to really bring some programs together between the choir that he has in Jerusalem and the work that we're doing here at the Adams Center with the kids in the choir. But then COVID happened. But we were friends from that time, and we were trying to do programs together, and we were doing some work with the Justice Choir in DC, just bringing a lot of social justice awareness work through music, and getting my youth choir involved. And it's been such an experience and such a great honor to get to know Micah. If you ever have the opportunity to be at any one of his performances, I would highly recommend it. He is multi-talented. I don't know how he does it. Like, he sings, he plays instruments, he puts, composes music, just at a whole other level of talent. And I'm so grateful to call him my friend. So much so, he got married this last summer. I was invited, but then I got sick and I couldn't go. And so that was a bummer. But both him and his wife are really good friends of mine. And it's interesting to bring this concept of music into play when it comes to multi-faith work and working with people of other faith groups, and how that actually is a catalyst in actually doing that and bringing the youth involved into this work at a very young age, so that we're not trying to do this over again with people at an older age at a later time. So that was my little intro, but officially, Micah Hendler is the founder and artistic director of the Jerusalem Youth Choir, an Israeli-Palestinian music and dialogue project featured for its innovative musicianship and integrity of purpose and process, from The Late Show with Stephen Colbert to the New York Times. Through the co-creation of music and the sharing of stories, the chorus empowers young singers from East and West Jerusalem to speak and sing their truths as they become leaders in their communities, and inspires singers and listeners around the world to join them in their work for peace, justice, inclusion, and equality. There's so much more to what Micah does than me just saying that, but I want him to be able to talk about that. And so with that, I'm going to hand the mic over to you, Micah, my friend. The floor is yours. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ernessa, for your extremely kind words. And I'm really excited to see everybody on this call. It's not often that I get to be on a Zoom with so many faith leaders from so many places, of so many different traditions and types of those traditions. So I'm just really excited to have this gathering and to be able to share a little bit about the work that I do in Jerusalem with the Jerusalem Youth Chorus, and some of the work that I do in the US as well, really bringing music as a tool for bridging divides in a whole lot of different ways. But I want the music to lead, because that's often what it does best. So I'm actually going to start, before I talk a whole bunch, just with a music video of the Jerusalem Youth Chorus that I think really tells our story in a way that is potentially more powerful than my just sort of talking about it. So I'm just going to share my screen here for a moment. Let's see. Okay. Can everybody see this home video thumbnail? Awesome.
Yep.
Okay, here we go. This is home.
البيت باباي شلي بقينا شلي شلي شلخ كان نحن بيخا وأهلا بالحبايب شرفوا. Hold on to me as we go. As we roll down this unfamiliar road, and although this wave is stringing us along, just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home. Settle down, it'll all be clear. Don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear. Trouble, it might drag you down. If you're lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home. Settle down, it'll all be clear. Ooh, don't pay no mind to the demons, they fill you with fear. Trouble, it might drag you down. If you're lost, you can always be found. Just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
Thanks, y'all, for the love in the chat. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so the Jerusalem Youth Court, that was our first music video that we made 10 years ago, along with my friend, YouTube and etc. star, Sam Shui. And the Jerusalem Youth Chorus really tries to bring folks from all the different religious and cultural, linguistic, political, socioeconomic, and cultural backgrounds in Jerusalem together through music, to really encounter one another at eye level, and to really have an opportunity to deepen those relationships, not only through music, but also through a very deliberate and professionally facilitated dialogue process that enables them to use the music as a doorway to then go deeper in their relationships with one another and really see the world through one another's eyes. That the chorus in many ways what you saw in this video is by no means representative of the, dominant realities of Jerusalem. In fact, I would say what we're doing in the chorus is despite the way that Jerusalem is, which is to say a place that is characterized by division rather than by unity, that is characterized by intolerance rather than tolerance. And unfortunately, of the tours that I've given of the old city of Jerusalem in the past, when I take people there, unfortunately, I feel like the moral of the story for the old city, as I'll show you now in a second, is basically, if there's something different about us, let's fight about it. And what we're trying to do in the Jerusalem Youth Chorus is instead to use the magnetism and the holy energy of Jerusalem instead as a unifying factor, as opposed to something to fight over. But to sort of set a little bit of that context, I want to share something fascinating with you that I found in a place in East Jerusalem called the Educational Bookshop, which is just a fantastic sort of intellectual bookstore in East Jerusalem, Palestinian bookstore. And this was from a sound atlas, or no, this was from just like a human geography, basically, of Israel-Palestine. And it was called the Sound Map of Jerusalem. And what I think is fascinating about it is it really shows points in the city of Jerusalem and from which public, very loud sounds emanate, and how that claims space, both religiously and politically, for different religions, types of religions, and political authorities. And so I sort of turned this sound map into a bit of a soundscape so you can hear sort of what it might sound like, and I'll walk you guys through it. So here we go. So you have the call to prayer, of course, from the mosque, and then multiple mosques at the same time. You have the church bells in the old city, and of course from many different denominations of Christianity that also sort of compete in a lot of ways, unfortunately, for space. You have Jewish prayer at the Western Wall, and then you have the prayer of women at the Western Wall, which for Orthodox Jews is also very controversial. And now you have the Orthodox protesters drowning out the Jewish women protesting at the Western Wall. You have, unfortunately, as well, you have these sirens, which are for days of Israeli memory and mourning. But of course, the question is who is included and who's not. And then you have the ambulance noises that, of course, are too frequent in responding to this kind of mentality around how sound can really claim space in a zero-sum kind of way. And so that is really the environment in which we do our work, is that energy, is that cacophony. And what we're trying to do really is to weave together harmony from those same voices, from the people who come from those communities, but to find the resonance between different traditions, and create a shared space where people can really come together upon a value language that we can teach and help people see what is shared, also what's not shared, and like acknowledge that and be real about that, and then see, given what we know of ourselves and of each other, what do we want to do about it, and how can we use music as a tool and a platform to then move the world a little bit closer to that direction. So that's really what we do in the Jerusalem Youth Chorus. We work with high schoolers primarily, though we now have a pretty strong cadre of alumni as well, whom we'll actually be bringing on tour to the US in the fall, which is very exciting. We'll be going to Chicago and DC. And so if anyone is based in any of those cities, we would love to connect with y'all and see if there are possibilities maybe to think about homestays or to advertise our concerts to your communities as an opportunity to engage with this work. That'll be at the end of October. And one of the things that that's also really important is that we educate through workshops, that it's not just that we spread our music, but we really try to hold space for others as well to do this kind of dialogue work, and to use the dialogue then as a tool for creativity and for actually creating original music from the experiences and stories that are shared. And so if any of you ever are bringing visiting groups to Jerusalem, definitely let us know, because we host groups all the time for workshops. And also we do Zoom workshops with groups all over the world who are interested in getting a taste of this work. So I'll just throw quickly an email into the chat in case any of you are interested in any more information about any of those things. But rather than, I could talk about sort of the mechanics of how the Jerusalem Youth Chorus works for a very long time, and we have a limited time. So I'd rather just sort of open up to questions about whatever is of most interest to all of you around, like, how do we create this shared space, or who joins and why, or like, how does the music interplay, or like, what about the faith elements? Like, all of those are different things that I'd be happy to share more about with the Jerusalem Youth Chorus specifically. And then I can share a little bit as well about some of the work that I'm doing in the US, also around musical bridge building that Ernessa and I have gotten to do some of together as well. So if anybody has any questions or things that are of interest.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Who's got a question? Larnell.
Larnell.
Okay. Hi, Micah. Thanks for that. I just wanted to ask, like, with your multi-faith work mixed with music and arts, do you also, with your group, like with the youth choir and with the youth, you talk about the history of the sacred music from, like, you know, a Jewish, Christian, and Islamic aesthetic, like in terms of the history of the sounds? Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good question. That's one of the things that is, for me, one of the most beautiful elements of the musical work that we do, is that we're able to really bring music of the different traditions that the singers bring with them to the group and highlight those in the group setting. So obviously in the video that you heard of Home, like, that's a pretty like pop, you know, arrangement. But of course we incorporated some mawal, like different Middle Eastern sort of improvisations on top. And in the sort of scope of all the repertoire that we do, we sing musics of the different faith traditions in their own, like on their own terms, which is really, really important. And one of the things that our singers, I think, love the most is getting to learn about one another's musical and faith traditions and have a chance to really connect in that deep way. There are questions. Adam.
What are the age range? What is the age range? What is the age range of the chorus?
So we work with high schoolers in our sort of flagship program, but we also continue our work with alumni, and the group that we'll be bringing in the fall is a group of our alumni as well, for a variety of both logistical and also content reasons, since we're going to be performing at different colleges and universities as part of our mission brief for this particular tour. And so we wanted to bring singers who are more at that age. We also work with the parents of the singers in the chorus, which has been really, really powerful, because a lot of them have similar concerns, similar questions, and similar desires to learn and connect as their kids, though not all of them. Definitely not all of them. Adam, I think you had a question.
Yeah, my question was going to be, do the parents get involved? And then also, do they ever have concerns and issues that you need to address in light of their lives?
Definitely. So oftentimes some parents are very supportive, some parents are kind of agnostic, and some parents are very opposed. And that's a really interesting process because obviously we're working with youth. So like we need parental permission to do this work. And also it's often like quite a negotiation because you'll have parents who aren't going to like legally withhold permission, but like actually hate what we're doing or are very suspicious of it. But because their kid is like so into it, like there's sort of a lot of factors going on. What we try to do is really meet everybody where they are, and show parents in particular that we're often not what they're afraid we are. And so what often happens is we try to sort of get a parent to come to a performance, right? And then just like watch their child really shining on stage and be so excited and so proud. And that often sort of switches people to see like, oh, this can't be so bad. Like my kid really, really loves this and is like really being authentically themselves. But that's not always how it goes. And there have often been sort of extreme parents on both sides who have just pulled their kids, and there's, you know, nothing we can do about it.
Micah, I never got a chance to really ask you. I know you have Jewish and Muslim kids in the choir. How many Christian kids do you get, or does it vary year by year? I'm sure it does. But how does that look, that composition?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We have about like half Jewish kids from West Jerusalem and about half Palestinian kids from East Jerusalem. Of the Palestinians, it's usually about 2/3 Muslim and 1/3 Christian, just based on the sort of demographics of the city. But that is, even in the demographics of the city, an overrepresentation of Christians compared to the percentage of Christian population in the city, which is interesting. And I think has a lot to do with socioeconomics and also traditions around choral singing.
That's awesome.
We also have, it's been really interesting because within each of those traditions, there are obviously many sub traditions. And so within the Jewish singers, we have secular, we have more like Masorti, sort of like traditional, and then we have Orthodox. We don't have any ultra Orthodox, but not because of the politics, but because we have guys and girls singing together. So that's interesting. And then on the Christian side, we have Catholics, we have Orthodox, we have Armenians, and sometime we've had, and we've had, I think, some Protestant sort of different denominations at different times as well. And in the Muslim community, there's also a wide range of religious observance. And also some of the same gender issues that we see among the very religious Jews, we see among the very religious Muslims as well. So that's there are a lot of commonalities. It doesn't just break down on like political lines.
My other question was centered around the idea and the concept that we as peace builders are always trying to plug into the work that we're doing is listening and hearing. And because of the issues that surround that part of the world, and the tension that's there, what can you say has been some of the highlights of what the Jerusalem Youth Chorus has done to bring those issues to light? Because you can't really ignore it, especially in that part of the world when it's happening outside of that, the place they're living and the schools that they're going. How does listening and hearing one another become part of the choir's movement?
That's a really, really good question and a really important point. And fundamentally, one of the strengths of this work is that already, even just as a musical ensemble, we're training listening, and we're training sort of being in a place of active listening, that of course translates to that same skill working in a conversational space. But we don't just rely on the musical metaphor of listening. Like, we actually are very deliberate about teaching that as a facilitation and dialogue skill in conversation. And what's really, really important, again, is that we're not sort of ignoring the dominant reality. We're not saying like, oh, okay, we all get along, so like everything is fine. But saying like everything outside is so messed up, and what we are doing is trying to create an alternative to that. And we are demonstrating sort of in microcosm and living in microcosm a different way of doing things, and trying musically to amplify that, and to try to show folks at all different levels of society, both locally and internationally, that it's actually possible and actually pretty cool and amazing and viable, and worth it to try to do things differently. I think a lot of what keeps sort of the Israeli-Palestinian situation so stuck is that both societies feel like there's no viable alternative to what's currently going on, that any sort of alternatives have been tried and failed, and the other side is just determined at all costs to make my life as hard as possible. And so there's nobody to talk to, and it's not worth trying because anyone who tries is an idiot or is naive or can't accomplish anything. And so I think what we're doing with the chorus, particularly because within the group, we really do that conflict transformation work, and people actually learn from one another's lived realities and the hardcore like political issues. Even if they disagree, they learn how to disagree. They learn how to disagree accurately. And ultimately then through the music have an opportunity to inspire others, even including like religious leaders, policymakers, leaders of different communities, that it's even worth still trying to do things differently as opposed to being a total lost cause, which actually in the ecosystem of the political change that's happening is actually a really important function. And a lot of policymakers whom we sing for have told us that. Yes, Howard.
Yeah, I was curious if you could tell me what types of places you perform at. I mean, do you perform in both West and East Jerusalem? Before, what types of groups do you perform?
So we perform throughout Jerusalem and then beyond as well. We do a lot of our performances in sort of neutral-esque spaces where people of both East and West Jerusalem could feel comfortable coming. But we also do our performances in spaces in East or West Jerusalem that really aren't for shared audiences. And we try to meet everybody where they are as well, in that sense. Or no?
Yes, Micah. I was just thinking in terms of like the whole multi-faith arts and the music part, you talk about peace building. Has there been any like besides, of course, this group, the multi-faith neighbors network, have you worked with any other local in Jerusalem like peace maker organizations from like the Islamic to the Jewish in that region?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that's really important is that there are actually hundreds of organizations that use different access points to bring Israelis and Palestinians, or Jews, Christians, and Muslims together, that we partner with a lot. And there are many different access points, whether it's sports or music or food or religious leaders or educators or working around the environment. Like there are many, many, many different groups. And what we do musically in this ecosystem is really try to power the field with some of the inspiration, some of the energy really that comes from the music to help people across the field really feel like what they're doing is sort of is connected to the heart reason of why they're doing the work. Because it's so easy when you're doing this work, particularly on like the level of policy, to feel like you're just sort of banging your head against a wall every day for many years. So we've found that our music helps to reconnect people with the why, with the sort of human emotion that oftentimes is connected to why they started doing this work in the first place. So there's, to cite one group, there's a group called the Alliance for Middle East Peace, which is an umbrella organization of, I think at this point, more than 200 Israeli-Palestinian organizations working on all different angles of peace building, justice work, social change, activism, and community building. Also, hi, Joel. It's so great to see you. I think actually Joel's being here is a perfect pivot to talk about some of this work in an American context, because Joel and Nessa and I organized this epic event at Covenant Church in West Virginia between the synagogue in DC. I'm now based in DC. The chorus is, I was able to transition the chorus to mostly local leadership. One of our Palestinian alumni is now our executive director. We have a whole team of Israelis and Palestinians who really are running the program day to day, and I work with and mentor them and create as many opportunities and support structures as I can for the program, and go a number of times a year. But I'm now based in Washington, and in DC there are two other hats that I wear. One is as the music co-director for Braver Angels, which is the country's largest red-blue political depolarization movement. And we similarly try to integrate music into the work of building bridges across the political divide in the United States. And then also as the musician in residence at Adas Israel congregation in Washington, which is the largest conservative synagogue in DC. And it's with that hat also that Joel and Nessa and I have been able to create a bit of a three-faith music series between the Adams Beat Choir that Nessa started and Covenant Church and Adas. And we had the most unbelievable musical evening at Covenant with the band from Adas and the band at Covenant and Adams Beat all together, and at the end, just like everybody really, I think, deeply connected and like dropped into the why and sort of the deep spirituality of the others' traditions and offerings. And as Joel really said it beautifully, like it wasn't about anybody trying to like change anybody, or anybody trying to convert anybody, or anybody trying to say my way is better than your way. It was just everyone really being in their musical truths and being able to hold space for everyone and to connect around that shared spirituality, which was really, really, really special. And at the end, everybody, of course, shared the spirituality of being proud of West Virginia, and we all sang Country Roads arm in arm, and it was just awesome. Ola, I see you just joined. Do you have a question?
Yeah, no, I was listening from the beginning. I have a question.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, Ernest and I are good friends. So, and I was at the Global Forum, the last one in Dallas. So it was really fantastic. So I love what you're doing. I think it's really, really amazing. My question is, when did you start the program? And actually 3 questions. When did you start the program? How have you seen it change in like some part of the society? in Jerusalem? Has it, what kind of effect has it made? And then thirdly, the children you said are high school children. How has it been with their families, getting them to come and listen and, you know, talk, the adults talking together through that? How has that been?
Wow, yeah, so great questions. I founded the program in 2012. So we're now just wrapping up our 11th year. And the program in a lot of ways has grown primarily from like, it really started as sort of a dream in my head. And then as a, you know, mostly sort of a one-man show, I was chief, you know, cook and bottle washer, to being a community that is now really locally owned and run by our alumni. And so that has been a really long process, but a very powerful one, and one where I'm constantly learning from them around different insights, how we can do things better, how we can plug into different communities more effectively. One of the things that gets to your second question around the impact that we've had, we evaluate our impact in three ways, in sort of three concentric circles. One is the impact on the singers themselves, and we have seen sort of both through stories, but also through surveys and quantitative research, that the chorus is really able to transform our singers in a really powerful way, both around their own feelings of empowerment and agency, and also their understandings of one another, and also equipping them to work together with people across difference. And then there's the impact that our singers have in their communities, which is something that we're hoping to work on much more in this coming decade as we scale, is to really partner with different organizations across Jerusalem, schools, community centers, religious congregations, etc., civil society groups, to musically power different communities. And then there's the impact that the chorus itself has had as a performing ensemble, which I touched on a little bit, in terms of providing really a sense of hope and an alternative to the dominant reality sort of in people's minds, but in a way that gets stuck in their heads. So I hope that answered your question. I think I could take probably one more question, and then I'd love to maybe share one more video and then hand it back over to you, Micah. Does anyone have a last question? Ernessa, what's up?
So obviously, being in Israel and in Jerusalem and in the Palestinian territories and seeing what's going on, and I'm referring back to that because a lot of the work that you're doing is in response to what's been going on there, and how you're able to present a platform to the youth to be able to come together and talk about what's going on, how they're feeling, and how they want to be heard, and then using music as a tool to kind of, you know, not just cope with what's going on, but also to give their voices out to the world of what they're feeling, and working together and listening to one another and being friends with people who are different, right? We see that between the Jewish and the Muslim, but I really want to hear what your Christian Palestinian students have to say, because they seem to be more on the minority scale in terms of numbers when it comes to these two other groups having issues and trying to overcome that. What do your Christian Palestinian students go through when they're with you, and what do they talk about?
That's a really, really great question. I'll also just note, super apropos of what you were saying, Ernessa, that the new curriculum that we're actually designing now goes even further to the point that you were making about using dialogue as a way of then creating original music in response to things that are happening outside in real time. Like, that's where we're going with our program, around original songwriting and enabling the singers and really equipping them to get together, to talk about what happened that week, and then to create music around that, even from multiple perspectives, on the spot, and then already share that on social media in a way that can really influence the conversation happening in real time. So that's one of the areas that we're hoping to move into. Regarding the question about the Christian participants, it's super complicated because different Christian participants feel differently about their sort of political allegiance, not so much allegiance, but belonging. Some of the Christian participants feel really Palestinian and really identify with that nationality. Some of them feel excluded from Palestinian society because they're minorities in a predominantly Muslim community and feel less connected to that part of their identity and more identify as like Arab as their ethnicity, as opposed to Palestinian as nationality, because they feel that Palestinian is tied to religious identity. Everybody who's been in and then some of the Christians are like, for example, Armenian, right? Who some Armenians sort of also, the Armenian community has its own story and its own history of thousands of years in Jerusalem. And its own religious traditions, and in many ways are neither Israeli nor Palestinian, or in some ways both, or it totally depends how you define the terms. And really each person gets to decide for themselves. But in many ways, the Christian community is caught in the middle in certain ways between the Israelis and the Palestinians, sort of dominant Jewish and Muslim narratives, which is interesting. I just want to share one more video before we go. And this one we particularly love because it really, when I'm talking about sort of that sense of hope and that sense of determination to do things differently and to really use the relationships that we build as a strength, as a shared strength in looking out for one another and trying to move the world in a more positive direction. This video we made on our last tour with Andy Grammer in LA at Village Studios. It's called Don't Give Up on Me. But it's our sort of Middle Eastern version of it.
I will fight for you. I always do until my heart is black and blue. And I will stay with you. We'll make it to the other side like lovers do. And I'll reach my hands out in the dark and wait for yours to, until I can wait for you. I'll wait for you. 'Cause I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up, no, not yet. Even when I'm down to my last breath, even when they say there's nothing left. So don't give up on, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up, no, not me. Even when nobody else believes, I'm not going down that easily. So don't give up on me. And I will hold on to you. No matter what this world will throw, it won't shake me loose. And I'll reach my hands out in the dark and wait for yours to, until I can wait for you. Wait for you. 'Cause I'm not I will fight for you. I always do until my heart is black and blue.
Thanks, yeah. Yeah, so I'll hand it back over to Micah. It was a real pleasure getting to meet all of you and share a little bit about how the relationships that we're building can really be a source for moving things in a different direction. So grateful for that.
Micah, thank you very much for the time together today. Outstanding. So good to get to hear from you, get to hear about your work. Thank you for the peacemaking.